Today, I'm going to tell you a story so unforgiving it reshapes destiny, set in the frozen heart of the Old West, where howling winds erase roads and mercy is never guaranteed. This is a land where survival hangs by a thread, and one wrong turn can place you directly in the path of forces meant to destroy you. It all began with a single stagecoach caught in a sudden blizzard, a small delay on a dangerous road that would shatter lives, expose hidden truths, and force a woman to choose between the world she knew and the truth she could no longer deny. Before we kick off this adventure, don't forget to hit like on the video and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. The stagecoach bucked and lurched as the horses screamed in terror, their hooves scrambling for purchase on the frozen trail. Elira Noxon slammed her gloved hands against the cracked leather seat, her fingers locking tight as fear cut through her chest. Outside, the northern Arizona mountains vanished beneath a screaming wall of snow, the wind driving ice sideways until the world beyond the rattling windows dissolved into a white, merciless blur. "Hold fast, miss!" Lorne Pickett's voice barely broke through the storm. The coach pitched at a sickening angle, and Elira caught a glimpse of empty space just inches from the wheels. The road toward Flagstaff had been dangerous since sunrise, but when the blizzard struck without warning, danger turned lethal. Across from her, a traveling salesman and an elderly couple exchanged wordless looks of dread. The coach slid hard, then came a sharp crack that split the air. The axle gave way. Elira's stomach dropped as the coach tipped, rolled, and shattered apart. Wood exploded, people screamed, gravity vanished. Something struck her head, and the world went black. She came back to herself with the taste of blood on her tongue and a deep, pounding ache behind her temple. Snow drifted down through a jagged hole where the roof had been. Dazed, Elira lifted a trembling hand to her forehead and hissed at the wet warmth beneath her fingers. "Hello?" Her voice sounded thin and useless against the long, mournful howl of the wind. "Is anyone there?" The coach lay on its side, half buried in snow. Nearby, the elderly woman lay still. Her husband knelt beside her, shoulders shaking as he wept. The salesman was gone. Fighting the pain in her ribs, Elira dragged herself upright, gasping as each breath burned. "The driver," she whispered. "We need to find the driver." She forced herself through a shattered window, and the sight outside stole the air from her lungs. The horses were gone, likely broken loose and lost to panic and snow. Lorne Pickett lay crumpled against a boulder, his neck twisted at an impossible angle. Beyond him stretched nothing but wilderness, endless pine trees drowned in white, and the sheer black face of the mountain rising above them. They were alone, stranded deep in contested land. The realization settled like ice in her gut. Iron Spur Post, where Garen Slade, her fiancé of 6 months, waited, lay at least 2 days away. The mining town they'd left that morning was no closer behind them. Elira had grown up on stories of Apache raids, tales of ruthless warriors sweeping down from the high country. Even back in Boston, the name alone had carried fear. Now, at 22, she stood in the heart of their territory as night closed in and the storm raged on. "We need shelter," the old man said, his voice breaking. "My Ruth, she's gone." Elira swallowed hard and nodded, forcing her panic down. Her father hadn't raised a daughter to surrender to fear. "We'll gather what we can," she said. "There has to be a cave or rock shelter nearby." The wind suddenly shifted, the snow thinning just enough to reveal dark shapes moving between the trees. Elira froze. Her breath caught as 7 riders emerged, mounted and silent, their faces shadowed beneath fur-lined hoods. The Apache had found them. The riders spread out around the wreckage with calm precision. Their leader dismounted smoothly, his height and presence commanding the space even before he spoke. Unlike the others, he wore no hood, only a simple band holding his long black hair back from his face. Snow clung to his shoulders, yet he seemed untouched by the cold. Elira stepped forward on shaking legs, placing herself between him and the grieving old man. Her heart thundered, but she raised her chin and met his dark, unreadable gaze. "Please," she said, steadying her voice, "we mean no harm. Our coach crashed in the storm." The Apache leader studied her closely. His face was carved sharp and lean, high cheekbones, strong jaw, eyes that felt like they cut straight through her. When he spoke, his English was clear, marked only by the faintest edge of an accent. "You stand on sacred ground." Elira blinked. "You speak English?" His jaw tightened. "I speak many tongues. That does not change where you are." "We didn't choose this," Elira replied, surprised by her own resolve. "We were traveling to Iron Spur Post." At the name of the fort, the warriors shifted, tension rippling through them. Their leader did not move, but something dark flickered in his eyes. "The soldier fort," he said coldly, "where blue coats train men to kill our children and steal our land." Elira's throat tightened. "My fiancé is stationed there, Garen Slade." She forced the words out. "I was going to be married." He stepped closer. Snow swirled between them, blurring the line that separated their worlds. Up close, she saw the pale scar running from his temple to his jaw. "What is your name?" he asked. "Woman with fire in her hair?" "Elira," she said quietly. "Elira Noxon." He nodded once, as if committing it to memory. "I am Atau." The name did not sound Apache to Elira Noxon, but she did not challenge it. Instead, she motioned toward the shattered coach. "There are injured people here, an old man. The driver is dead. Please, if you could help us reach the fort." "No." The word fell between them like stone dropped into still water. "The mountain passes ahead are sealed by snow," Atau said evenly. "The valley trail belongs to soldiers who shoot my people on sight." His dark eyes never left hers. "You will come with us." It was not an offer. Fear crawled up Elira's spine, but she did not step back. "And if we refuse?" Atau's expression remained calm, yet something shifted in his gaze, perhaps respect, perhaps warning. "Then you die here, woman with fire in her hair. The storm will return stronger. Even your soldiers would tell you this." As if summoned by his words, the wind rose into a shrieking gale, ice stinging Elira's face. She looked back at Eli Calder, who gave a faint nod, resignation etched deep in his eyes. "Very well," she said, turning back to Atau. "We accept your hospitality." For the first time, the faintest trace of amusement touched his mouth. Not a smile, but a softening. "You use strange words for a prisoner, Elira Noxon." "I'm not your prisoner," she said, even as a warrior stepped forward with rope. "I'm choosing to survive." Atau watched as her wrists were bound. Many prisoners believe they have choices. He turned away, speaking sharply in Apache as orders rippled through the group. Two warriors lifted Eli onto a horse. Another gathered what little had survived the wreck. When Atau returned, he carried a fur-lined cloak and placed it over Elira's shoulders without a word. His fingers brushed her neck, and despite her fear, a jolt ran through her, like lightning caught in human skin. "You ride with me," he said quietly. "The cold is cruel." Before she could object, he lifted her onto his horse and mounted behind her. His chest pressed to her back, arms closing around her as he took the reins. Warmth spread from him, sinking through her soaked clothes. "My camp lies beyond the ridge," he said, his breath warm near her ear. "You will wait there until the pass is clear." "And then?" Illyra asked, acutely aware of how close he was. Atau did not answer at once. When he did, his voice carried a weight she could not read. "Then we will see which path the Great Spirit chooses for you." As they rode into the swirling snow, Illyra felt the future she had planned unravel with every hoofbeat. Iron spur post, Garen Slade, the life she expected, all faded into the white behind them. Ahead lay only uncertainty and the steady rhythm of Atau's heart against her back. The Ashwind kin rested in a hidden valley, shielded from the mountain winds by towering stone walls. As they descended the narrow trail, Illyra counted nearly 30 dwellings, traditional shelters mixed with sturdy wooden cabins. Smoke curled from cooking fires, and children paused to stare as the riders entered the camp. Atau's arms remained firm around her, his body a barrier against the cold. Exhaustion finally overpowered her pride, and she leaned into his warmth. "You tremble," he observed. "I'm cold," she replied, though fear and shock twisted deeper than the chill. At the center of the camp, Atau dismounted smoothly and reached up to help her down. His hands closed around her waist, holding her suspended for a brief moment. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them before he set her on her feet and stepped away. "She will tend your wound," he said, gesturing to a woman approaching. "The old man will be cared for in the healing lodge." "Thank you," Illyra said, touching the dried blood at her temple. "But I would rather stay with him. He lost his wife today." Atau studied her. "You carry another's grief when your own path is uncertain?" "Compassion isn't a luxury," she said. "It's a necessity." A ghost of a smile crossed his lips. "Just Atau, and you speak like the missionaries who raised me." She blinked. "You were raised by missionaries?" His expression shut tight. "That story is for another time. Go with Senai now. The old man will join you after he is treated." Illyra wanted to ask more, but Atau had already turned away, issuing orders. Senai, a woman only a few years older than Illyra, approached with measured calm. Her dark eyes held neither welcome nor hostility, only careful judgment as she studied the stranger who had ridden into their world. "Come," Senai said in softly accented English. "You are cold, and you are hurt." She guided Illyra Noxon to a small but solid cabin set at the edge of the Ashwind kin. Inside, a fire burned low in a stone hearth, filling the single room with warmth and the clean, sharp scent of cedar smoke. Furs were spread across the packed earth floor. In one corner stood a simple wooden frame fitted with a deerskin mattress. "This was my brother's dwelling," Senai explained, motioning for Illyra to sit near the fire. "He died last summer. Soldiers shot him while he hunted in the valley." The flatness of her tone struck harder than grief would have. Illyra winced. "I'm sorry." Senai dipped a cloth into warm water and began cleaning the gash at Illyra's temple. "Your sorrow changes nothing," she said calmly, "just as your blue-coat fiancé changes nothing." "You know about that?" Illyra asked. "Atau told me while you were brought from the horses." Senai's hands were careful, despite her words. "He says you have courage, or foolishness," she added quietly. Illyra stiffened. "Is it foolish to speak the truth?" "It is foolish to defy Atau." Senai pressed a sharp-smelling salve into the wound. "He is not like other men. Even among our people he walks alone." "Because he was raised by missionaries?" Senai's hands paused for a brief moment. "That is part of his story. Not all of it." She wrapped Illyra's head with a clean strip of cloth. He returned to us 10 winters ago speaking the white man's tongue, but with the heart of an Apache. Now he leads because he understands both worlds and trusts neither. Illyra absorbed the words in silence. The man who had met her gaze in the storm suddenly felt deeper, more divided. A man caught between worlds, much as she now was. "Rest," Senai said, rising. "Food will come soon. The storm will keep us here many days." When she left, Illyra removed her damp outer layers and wrapped herself in one of the thick furs. Exhaustion weighed on her, yet sleep would not come. Her thoughts drifted to Garen Slade, waiting at Iron Spur Post, likely growing uneasy with her delay. What would he do when the stagecoach never arrived? Would he send men to search? The answer offered little comfort. In weather like this, no patrol would ride into contested land. Not even the red spur column. The door opened, pulling her from her thoughts. Atau stepped inside carrying a steaming wooden bowl. He had shed his riding gear and now wore buckskin leggings and a loose cotton shirt, open at the throat. A silver medallion hung from a leather cord against his chest. "You should eat," he said, holding out the bowl. "Elk stew. It will warm you." Illyra accepted it carefully. "Thank you." He remained standing as she took a cautious sip. The stew was rich and hearty, spreading warmth through her limbs. "Will your companion live?" he asked after a moment. "The old one." "His grief is heavy," she replied, "but his body is stronger than it seems. His name is Eli Calder. He and his wife were traveling to join their son in California." Atau nodded once. "Names matter. They carry weight." He added another log to the fire. Flames lit the sharp planes of his face, leaving half of it in shadow. "Why do you travel to marry a soldier, Illyra Noxon?" he asked. The question caught her off guard. "Garen Slade is a good man. We met in Boston at my father's shipping office." That is not an answer. She set the bowl aside, suddenly defensive. "I don't see how my reasons concern you." "Everything within my land concerns me," Atau replied evenly. His eyes held her, steady and intense. "Especially a woman who challenges me without fear when most men would tremble. Perhaps I hide my fear better than most." Something close to a smile touched his mouth. "Perhaps." He studied her briefly. "Your wound heals well?" "Yes. Senai is very skilled." "She is my cousin." Atau moved toward the door, then paused. "Tomorrow you may walk the camp, under guard. I will not cage you like an animal." The consideration surprised her. "That's generous." His expression darkened slightly. "When I was 9 winters old, missionaries locked me in a small room for speaking my own tongue. I know the pain of walls." His hand rested on the door. "We are not the savages your army claims, Illyra Noxon." "I never said you were." "Your eyes did," he replied quietly. "When we first met." His gaze held hers. "Now they say something else." Before she could answer, he was gone, leaving Illyra alone with her confusion and the lingering warmth of where his presence had filled the room. The days that followed settled into a careful, uneasy rhythm. Each morning, an Apache woman named Isha brought Illyra Noxon clean clothing, simple dresses sewn from softly tanned deerskin, and carried away her soiled garments to be washed. Eli Calder remained in the healing lodge, his strength returning little by little, even as grief stayed close at his side. True to Atau's word, Illyra was allowed to move freely through the Ashwind kin, though always with Senai or another woman beside her. What she witnessed unsettled everything she had been taught about the Apache. Children chased one another through the snow, their laughter bright and familiar in any tongue. Women worked hides, cooked over open fires, and threaded intricate beadwork. Men repaired weapons, trained horses, and returned with game from the high country. This was a living community, not the ruthless band of raiders painted in newspaper columns. On her fourth morning, Illyra encountered Atau outside the council lodge. He stood speaking with several warriors, but his attention shifted the moment she appeared. He excused himself and approached, his expression as unreadable as ever. "The confinement does not sit well with you," he said. Illyra shook her head. "I was thinking how wrong my assumptions were. Your people live much like any community I've known." A faint trace of satisfaction crossed his features. "Walk with me." He gestured toward a narrow path leading away from the heart of the camp. Senai, who had been accompanying Illyra, exchanged a brief look with Atau and quietly withdrew. Illyra fell into step beside him, aware of curious eyes following them. "Your presence brings talk," Atau said. "I imagine it would." "A white woman here is unusual," he replied, a hint of dry amusement in his voice. "But it is not your whiteness that stirs them. It is that I, who vowed never to bend to the white man's world, spend time with you." Illyra glanced at him. "And why do you?" He did not answer at once. They reached a small clearing where a frozen stream cut through the valley, snow-laden pines enclosing the space in silence. "When the missionaries took me," he said at last, "they taught me that everything about my people was savage, our language, our beliefs, our ways." His gaze fixed on the distant peaks. "For years I believed them. I spoke their words, read their books, prayed to their God." "What changed?" Illyra asked. "I watched a soldier shoot an Apache woman who begged for food," Atau said steadily. "She knelt before him, her infant tied to her back." He tightened his jaw. "He shot her through the heart, then reported he had killed a hostile." Horror washed through Illyra. "That's monstrous." "That is the world your people brought with them," he said, turning back to her. "That day I knew I had to return, no matter how hard they tried to erase the Apache from my soul." "Not all white men are like that," Illyra said softly. "No," he agreed. "But enough are." He bent and picked up a smooth stone from the ice. "You asked why I spend time with you. Perhaps it is because when you look at me, you see a man, not a savage." The admission hung between them, unexpectedly vulnerable. Illyra felt an urge to reach for him, to close the distance with a simple touch. Instead, she hugged herself against the cold. Atau noticed at once. "You are cold. We should return." As they headed back, shouts rose ahead. A group of warriors rode in hard, their horses lathered despite the cold. At their center, a man slumped forward, blood darkening the snow beneath him. Atau broke into a run, Illyra close behind. The wounded man was helped down, his face twisted in pain. Even through grime and blood, Illyra recognized him. Bram Kessler, the salesman from the stagecoach. "What happened?" Atau demanded. "Soldiers," one warrior replied in Apache, words Illyra could not understand. "A patrol from the fort. They shot him thinking he was one of us, then left him when they saw he was white." Atau knelt, examining the bullet wound in Bram's shoulder. "Take him to the healing lodge," he ordered. Then he turned to Illyra. "Your soldiers are searching. They shot this man, your fellow traveler, by mistake." Illyra's blood went cold. "They wouldn't deliberately." "They did," Atau cut in, his voice sharp as flint. "As they have countless times before." Snow clung to his buckskins as he stood. "If they are combing these mountains, they may find our camp." "Would that be so terrible?" Illyra asked. "Perhaps there could be negotiation." "There is no negotiation with those who see us only as obstacles," he replied. His expression hardened. We move at dawn, deeper into the mountains, where the red spur column will not follow. And what of me, and Eli Calder, and now this man? For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Atau's face. You cannot reach Iron Spur Post while soldiers patrol with fingers on triggers, he said, and you cannot remain here alone. So you come with us? Yes. His gaze held hers, steady and unyielding. Until I find a safe passage for you. That night, as Elira Noxon prepared to sleep, a soft knock sounded at her door. She opened it to find Atau, his tall frame outlined against the cold starlight. The wounded man asks for you, he said. He is feverish, but awake. Elira pulled the borrowed shawl around her shoulders and followed him to the healing lodge. Inside, the air was thick with the sharp, earthy scent of medicinal herbs. Bram Kessler lay on a pallet, his skin pale in the firelight. Eli Calder sat nearby, his weathered face tight with worry. Miss Noxon, Bram whispered when he saw her. Thank God you're alive. Elira knelt beside him. Save your strength, Mr. Kessler. He gripped her hand with surprising force. Listen to me. The soldiers, they aren't just searching. She leaned closer. What do you mean? They plan to burn out any Apache camp they find, he rasped. Orders from the new commander at Iron Spur Post. Elira felt Atau stiffen beside her. New commander? She asked. Your fiancé, Bram said faintly. Garen Slade, promoted after the last commander fell ill. His first order was to clear the territory of hostiles before spring. The world tilted. The man who had written her letters, who spoke of honor and restraint, had ordered what sounded like a purge. There must be some mistake, Elira whispered. No mistake, Bram said, his eyelids fluttering. I heard him myself when I reached the fort. I tried to come back and warn the camp. The patrol found me first. She turned to Atau, expecting anger. Instead, his face held only a deep, weary certainty. Now you see, he said quietly, why there can be no peace while your people see mine as less than human. As the truth settled, something inside Elira shifted. The certainty she had carried all her life cracked. Garen Slade, the man she loved, could not be both the man she knew and the one who ordered villages destroyed. Yet Bram's shattered body lay between those truths. I didn't know, she whispered. The words felt thin. Atau's hand rested briefly on her shoulder, a simple gesture that nearly undid her. Now you do. Snow fell softly as they left the lodge, the storm's fury spent. Atau walked her back to her cabin in silence. At her door he stopped. We leave at first light. Pack only what you need. She nodded, unable to meet his eyes. As he turned away, she found her voice. Atau, thank you for showing me the truth even when it hurts. Something unguarded crossed his face before it vanished. Truth is like the mountain, Elira Noxon. It stands whether we choose to see it or not. Long after he left, she sat by the fire, watching the flames and wondering how she could feel so lost. And yet for the first time, closer to her true path. Dawn broke to the sounds of the Ashwind kin breaking camp. Elira had slept little, torn between grief for the life she imagined and clarity about the one before her. She packed her few belongings, her cleaned traveling clothes, and the small locket holding her parents' portraits. Outside, the camp moved with practiced efficiency. Women loaded travois with supplies, men gathered horses, children carried what they could, solemn but unafraid. They had done this before, she realized, fled soldiers, left homes, begun again. Senai approached, leading a dappled mare. You will ride this one, she said. Atau says you sit a horse well. He noticed that? Elira asked, surprised. A knowing look passed over Senai's face. Atau notices everything about you. She secured Elira's bundle to the saddle. The old man and the wounded one will ride in the medicine wagon. It will be slow, but safer. Elira glanced toward the wagon where Eli helped settle Bram onto a bed of furs. That's generous, she said softly, considering they are white. Senai's expression did not change. We are not the savages your books describe. Life is sacred, even the lives of those who would take ours. Before Elira could reply, Atau rode up on his black stallion. Today he wore full Apache dress, beaded buckskin leggings, a knife at his belt, a single eagle feather bound in his hair. Red and black paint marked his face, sharpening the angles of his cheekbones and jaw. He looked every inch a warrior. Yet when his eyes met Elira's, she saw the same man who had spoken to her beside the frozen stream. We ride northwest, he announced. The soldiers will expect us to go deeper into the mountains. We head instead for the canyon lands, where horses cannot easily follow. Elira mounted the mare, settling her borrowed dress. How far? 3 days, Atau said, if the weather holds. Atau's eyes swept over the camp as it broke apart with practiced efficiency. Stay close to Senai, he said quietly. If there is trouble, he hesitated. If trouble comes, you ride hard and do not look back. I won't abandon these people, Elira Noxon answered, her voice firm. Not after what I've learned. Something like respect flickered in his gaze. Your loyalty shifts quickly, Elira Noxon. Not my loyalty, she replied. My understanding. He nodded once and raised his arm. At the signal, the Ashwind kin moved as one, an unspoken departure from the valley that had sheltered them. Elira fell in beside Senai, the medicine wagon creaking along behind. Atau rode at the front, dropping back now and then to check their pace or confer with scouts. The day unfolded to the steady rhythm of hooves on snow. They passed through pine forests and across open meadows, alert, cautious, always watching. By midday, the snowfall eased, thin winter sun glinting off the white land. Elira studied the people around her with new eyes, the quiet dignity with which they bore displacement, the care given to elders and children, the absence of complaint despite the strain. These were not the bloodthirsty caricatures of cheap novels. They were a people fighting to endure. As dusk neared, Atau called a halt in a sheltered ravine. Camp rose swiftly. Temporary shelters, small fires, food shared. Elira helped where she could, grateful that her hands were accepted without suspicion. After checking on Eli Calder and Bram Kessler, whose fever had broken during the march, she drifted to the edge of camp. Atau stood there alone, watching the sun sink in the west. Your people move with remarkable skill, she said, joining him. We have had much practice, he replied, bitterness threading his words. Each season, the land we are allowed to live on shrinks. Each year, more of my people die, or are forced onto reservations. The reservations, Elira asked carefully, are they truly so terrible? He turned, war paint stark in the fading light. Have you ever seen a wild eagle in a cage? How it beats its wings until they bleed, until its eyes dull? He looked away. That is what captivity does to a people born free. Her chest tightened. I'm beginning to understand. He faced her fully. Then understand this. I will die before I let my people be caged. I will fight your soldiers, even your fiancé, if that is what it takes. The mention of Garen Slade sent a sharp pang through her, not of loyalty, but of disillusionment. "After what I've learned," she said quietly, "I don't believe he is my fiancé anymore." Atau searched her face. "Words are easily spoken. Then I'll prove it with my actions." She met his gaze without flinching. "I will not return to Iron Spur Post, not to a man who would order the deaths of innocent women and children." For a long moment he said nothing. At last his voice softened. "You are an unusual woman, Elira Noxon." "So I'm told," she answered with a faint smile. "Usually not as a compliment." A hint of warmth touched his mouth. "Rest now. Tomorrow will be harder." As foretold, the second day tested them. The ground turned harsh and broken, forcing dismounts and careful leading through narrow passes. By midday, dark clouds stacked the horizon, promising more snow. Atau called a brief halt in a small clearing. Elira sat on a fallen log, rubbing her aching calves, when raised voices rippled from the scouts ahead. Atau spoke with them quickly, his expression darkening, then returned to the group. "Soldiers," he announced. "A patrol on our trail. 8 men with rifles." Murmurs spread. A woman pulled her child close. "How far?" a warrior asked. "Less than an hour behind." Atau scanned the group, calculating. "We cannot outrun them with the wagon and the children." "Then we fight," another warrior said, reaching for his weapon. "No," Atau's voice cut through the tension. "They do not yet know our numbers. We will split." He pointed to several warriors. "You 5, take the women, children, and elders. Continue to the canyon lands. The rest stay with me and lay a false trail east." A diversion, Elira realized, giving the main group time to reach safety. Atau turned to her. "Yes, the soldiers will follow what looks like the larger force." "It's dangerous," she said, concern plain. "War is dangerous." He gestured to Sinai. "You will go with the main group, Eli Calder and Bram Kessler as well." The decision settled like a held breath as the camp prepared to divide. Elira shook her head. "I'm staying with you." Surprise flashed across Atau's face. "Why?" "Because if the soldiers catch you, I might be useful." She squared her shoulders. "Captain Garen Slade was my fiancé. They know my face. I can draw them off. Buy you time." The warriors traded uneasy looks. Atau studied her with an intensity that set her pulse racing. "You would risk yourself for Apache lives?" he asked quietly. "I would risk myself for what's right." After a long moment, he nodded once. "Very well. But you do exactly as I say, without question." The camp split swiftly. The main party pressed northwest while Atau, Elira, and 7 warriors turned to lay a false trail. Before they rode, Sinai embraced Elira. "You have a warrior's heart," she whispered. "Let it guide you safely back to us." Elira watched the others vanish into the trees, then turned to find Atau waiting. He had scrubbed away his war paint and changed into plain clothing, dulling the marks of leadership. "We ride east," he said. "Make it obvious. When night falls," he added, "we circle back and rejoin our people." For hours they traveled east, leaving signs no soldier could miss: snapped branches, scuffed snow, scraps of food. Near dusk, they stopped in a wide clearing and built a fire larger than needed. "Now we wait," Atau said. "They'll see the fire. And if they attack? Then we vanish into the dark while they charge an empty camp." A ghost of a smile crossed his mouth. Old, but effective. Night dropped like velvet over the mountains. Watches were set. Elira couldn't sleep, her thoughts spiraling. Of Garen, of the people fleeing north, of the man beside her whose presence pulled like gravity. "You should rest," Atau murmured, catching her restlessness. I can't, she said. Too much has changed. She tightened the fur cloak around her shoulders. A week ago, I was riding to marry a man I thought I knew. Now I'm helping his enemy escape. There is no judgment, Atau said softly. She met his eyes. Am I your enemy, Atau? The question hung between them. A warrior slipped in soundlessly, whispering in Apache. Atau went still. Soldiers, he translated, moving through the trees to the south. He issued quick commands. The fire was smothered to a faint glow, enough to sell the lie. Atau took Elira's arm and guided her to the horses, already saddled at the clearing's edge. When I signal, follow close, he breathed. No sound. She nodded, heart pounding. Lantern light flickered between trunks. The patrol crept nearer, voices low. Then recognition struck her like ice. Garen Slade himself led them. I want the Apache leader alive, if possible, his voice carried. The rest are expendable, and watch for a white woman. Blonde, blue-eyed. She may be a hostage. Elira's breath caught. Atau's grip tightened once, then eased. On my mark, he whispered. 3, 2. A shout cracked the silence. Camp ahead! Ready to fire! Now! Atau pulled her toward the horses. Chaos erupted. Rifles flared, strobing the night. The warriors melted into the forest while soldiers surged into the abandoned camp. Elira swung into the saddle, adrenaline lending speed and certainty. Atau mounted beside her and whistled softly. The signal. They rode hard into the dark, leaving confusion behind as the soldiers realized the trick. For nearly an hour they galloped in silence, the only sounds the rasp of breath and the crunch of snow under pounding hooves. Atau guided them through a snarl of tight defiles and thick timber no tracker would willingly follow. At last he called a halt, in a shallow hollow cupped by stone. The warriors slid from their saddles, tending the horses and drawing deep breaths. They won't pick up our trail before dawn, Atau said, helping Elira Noxon down. By then, fresh snow will bury what we left. Her legs shook from the punishing ride. When she faltered, Atau steadied her by the arm. In the pale moonlight filtering through the pines, his face looked sculpted from shadow and silver. Sharp lines, hidden depths. I heard Garen Slade, she said softly. He called me a hostage. It's easier for him to believe that, Atau replied, than to accept you chose another road. He released her arm slowly. Perhaps it's even true. Perhaps you are my hostage, Elira Noxon. There was something beneath the words. A question. She felt herself drawn closer, as if unseen threads tugged them together. Is that what I am to you? She asked. A hostage? Atau's gaze dipped to her lips, then returned to her eyes. You know it isn't. The admission shifted the air between them, a barrier falling away, leaving only the truth that had been gathering since they first met. When his hand rose to her cheek, she didn't pull back. His fingers were warm, gentle despite their strength. From the moment I saw you standing in the snow, he said, voice low and intent, defying me with fire in your eyes, you were more than a captive. You were... What? She whispered. A question I can't answer, he said. A path I never expected. His thumb traced her jaw. A woman who makes me forget the hatred I've carried. The warriors had quietly withdrawn, granting a pocket of privacy. In the still winter night, with danger threading the dark, Elira made a choice that would change everything. Rising onto her toes, she pressed her lips to Atau's. For a heartbeat, he stayed still, startled. Then his arms closed around her, drawing her in as he returned the kiss with a fierce tenderness that stole her breath. His embrace was both gentle and strong, a living contradiction that matched the man himself. When they parted, her heart raced, not with fear, but with a wild, unfamiliar joy. Atau rested his forehead against hers, breathing uneven. "This changes everything," he murmured. She nodded. It did. Her future, her understanding of herself, the boundaries between worlds she'd believed unbreakable. A low whistle from a scout cut the moment. Atau straightened at once. "We move," he said. "There's a place ahead where we can rest until dawn." They rode on through the night, not speaking of what had passed, though everything had been altered by it. By first light they reached a hidden canyon where the rest of the Ashwind kin waited. Senai hurried forward, embracing Elira with unexpected warmth. "You came back. We feared the worst when the scouts heard gunfire." "The soldiers found only shadows," Atau said as he dismounted. His eyes met Elira's briefly, a silent understanding. The day passed in guarded rest, sentries posted. Elira checked on Eli Calder and Bram Kessler, finding both improved despite the ordeal. Kessler, especially, seemed changed. "They saved my life," he told her as she changed his bandage. "After white soldiers shot me and left me for dead, a man rethinks what he's been taught." By evening, scouts reported the soldiers had lost the trail and were turning back toward Iron Spur Post. Relief swept the camp, though Atau kept watch. As twilight deepened, Elira climbed a small rise where Atau stood alone, stars pricking the blue. "Your plan worked," she said. "For now," he answered, weariness edging his voice. "They'll return, again and again, until we're gone from these mountains." She touched his arm. "What will you do?" He covered her hand with his. "Head north, perhaps. The high country holds places soldiers seldom go, places where we might live in peace for a time." Then he turned fully to her, his expression open in a way she hadn't seen before. "That depends, in part, on you." Her breath caught. "Last night," Atau said carefully, "some paths, once taken, change all that follows." "I don't regret it," Elira said, finding courage in the gathering dark. "What I regret is how long it took me to see the truth. About Garen, about your people, about you." Atau took her hands in his. "And what truth do you see in me, Elira Noxon?" "I see a man straddling two worlds," she said, steady and clear, fighting to protect what he loves. A man of honor, rare in an age that forgets the word. She stepped closer, drawn by the same unseen pull that had brought them together the night before. "A man I could love, if given the chance." The vulnerability that crossed Atau's face made him seem younger. The weight he carried briefly eased. His fingers tightened around hers. "That road would not be easy," he warned. "You would live between worlds, fully claimed by neither." "I already do," Elira replied, with a soft smile. "Perhaps that's why I understand you." Atau answered by pulling her into his arms. His embrace promised more than vows ever could. Beneath the stars and the dark silhouettes of the mountains, they stood together, two souls meeting across a divide shaped by conflict. Later, by the central fire, Senai watched them with knowing eyes. "The spirits move in strange ways," she murmured. "What looks like misfortune can be the first step onto a new path." Elira studied Atau across the flames as he spoke with his warriors, firelight animating his features. "Do you believe there can be peace between our peoples?" she asked. Senai considered carefully. "Not soon. Maybe not in our lifetime." She glanced back at Elira. "But every journey begins with one step. Perhaps you and Atau are that step." Morning arrived beneath a clear sky, and a choice. The Ashwind kin would continue north to winter grounds known only to them, a hidden valley sheltered from pursuit. Eli Calder announced he would press on to California once strong enough. Bram Kessler, to Elira's surprise, asked to remain with the people until spring. "I've nowhere urgent to be," he said, "and I owe them my life. I can make myself useful." As preparations began, Atau found Elira. "We leave within the hour," he said quietly. "I need to know your decision." She looked south, toward Iron Spur Post beyond the mountains, the life she'd planned, the polished certainty of officers' wives and polite society. A life she now understood was built atop others' suffering. Then she turned to Atau, to the proud people who had shown her grace despite every reason for mistrust, to a world richer and truer than the one she'd left. "My choice is made," she said, meeting his eyes. "I stay with you." Joy broke across his face like sunrise, sudden and bright. He took her hands and pressed them to his chest. "There will be trials," he said, even as happiness warmed his voice. "Your world won't release you easily." "My world is where I choose it to be," she answered, stepping closer, "and I choose to be here, with you." When the people broke camp and moved north, Elira rode at Atau's side, no longer a captive, no longer a stranger, but a woman who had found her path in the least expected place. The mountains behind them kept their secrets. Ahead lay uncertainty, but between them grew something stronger than the prejudices that divided their peoples. A love forged in wilderness, tempered by truth, sustained by courage. Spring came to the northern Arizona mountains in a riot of wildflowers and melting snow. The hidden valley that had sheltered the people through winter now glowed with sunlight. Streams, swollen with thaw, traced silver paths through new grass. Elira stood at the entrance of the wickiup she now shared with Atau, watching children chase one another through fields of blue lupine and orange paintbrush. 3 months had changed her in ways she'd never imagined. Her skin had bronzed from open days, her hands bore calluses from honest work, her heart had settled in a world she once feared. "You smile more now," Senai observed, joining her. Through winter's isolation, friendship had grown between them, beyond background or blood. Senai had taught her language and custom, the ways of survival. Elira had shared reading and writing, teaching Senai and several children. "I have reasons too," Elira said, glancing to where Atau worked with the men, readying for the spring hunt, his tall form unmistakable, movements sure. "The council meets tonight," Senai said. "They'll decide whether to move the camp." A flutter of unease stirred in Elira's chest. The decision had been delayed for weeks. Remain or push farther north away from the creeping pressure of settlers and the Red Spur column. Atau was torn between the safety of distance and the pain of leaving ancestral ground. "Has he told you how he'll speak?" Senai asked. "No," Elira sighed. "He carries it alone, though I've tried to share the weight." Senai touched her arm gently. "He shields you. Leadership weighs heavy, especially when a single decision may decide whether a people endure." As dusk settled into the valley, the council fire was kindled at the heart of the camp. Women were not customarily part of such councils, yet Atau had insisted that Elira Noxon be present, not to speak, but to witness. She sat a little apart from the ring of men, Senai at her side, while elders and warriors gathered to choose their course. The council chief, an aged man named Rauk, whose judgment was respected across the bands, opened the talks. "We stand before a choice with no easy answer," he said, his voice steady despite his years. "Each season the soldiers draw nearer. The game thins. Our ancestral ground shrinks like water under a summer sun." Warriors spoke one by one. Some argued fiercely for moving north, where other Apache bands had found a measure of calm. Others urged staying to defend the lands of their fathers. Atau rose last, and when he did, the circle fell quiet. "I have lived in both worlds," he began, his eyes sweeping the gathered men before resting briefly on Illyra. "I know the strength and the weakness of the white man. I have felt their hatred, and, on rare occasions, their mercy." He paused, face grave. "They will not stop coming. Their hunger for land, for gold, for what we hold, has no end." Murmurs of agreement moved around the fire. "But I have also learned this," Atau continued. "They are not all the same. Some recognize injustice. Some would stand with us if given the chance." His gaze returned to Illyra. "Some would choose our way over theirs." The meaning was clear to all. Illyra felt the weight of many eyes, curious, cautious, still doubtful despite the month she had lived among them. "I do not advise surrender," Atau said firmly. "Nor do I call for a battle we cannot win. I offer a third way, one that demands a different kind of courage." He laid out his plan: to send envoys to Silas Wayne, the territorial governor, bypassing the army command at Iron Spur Post, to seek formal recognition of the right to remain on a portion of their ancestral lands, to use growing newspaper attention on Indian affairs by telling their story to sympathetic journalists. "It is a risk," he admitted, "but one worth taking before we abandon mountains that have sheltered our people beyond memory." Debate stretched late into the night. Illyra watched as Atau met questions and challenges with calm resolve. This was the leader she had glimpsed before, now fully revealed, thinking not only of survival, but of a future. When the council finally broke near midnight, his proposal carried, though not unanimously. They would remain through summer, send representatives to negotiate, and prepare to move only if those efforts failed. Illyra waited outside their dwelling, pride and worry mingling in her chest. When Atau emerged, weariness lined his face, but his eyes brightened at the sight of her. "You were extraordinary," she said softly as he took her hands. "I was afraid," he confessed, a rare openness in his voice. "So many lives balance on these choices." She lifted a hand to his cheek. "You gave them hope, a path that keeps dignity and safety intact." He drew her close, holding her as though she steadied him in uncertain waters. "There is something I must ask," he said into her hair. "I have waited for days." She leaned back to meet his eyes. "What is it?" "For the mission to the governor, we will need someone who understands the white man's world," he said. "Someone who can speak with authority there while truly representing us." His gaze searched hers. "I ask you to go with them." The request startled her. Winter had bound her fully to life among the people. She rarely thought of the world she'd left. The thought of returning, even briefly, stirred conflict. "You want me to leave?" she asked, trying to grasp it. "I want you to help," Atau said gently, his hands resting on her shoulders. "No one else bridges our worlds as you do. No one else the governor might truly hear when Apache concerns are raised." "And if I meet Garen Slade?" The question could not be avoided. Reports all winter spoke of patrols still probing the mountains, though none had reached their hidden valley. "That is part of the danger," Atau acknowledged, his jaw tightening. "But you would not go alone. 2 warriors would accompany you, Kiri and Ashen. They know enough English to manage." Illyra considered carefully. The thought of leaving Atau, even for a time, cut deep, but she understood the mission's weight. "When would we leave?" "In 2 weeks, once the lower passes are clear," he said, his thumbs tracing slow circles on her shoulders. "I would not ask if there were another way." She nodded at last. "I know, and I will go." She reached up and brushed the silver medallion resting against his chest. the one he had worn from the day they met. "But I need something from you first." "Anything," Atau answered without pause. "Tell me about this." Her fingertips lingered on the metal. "You've never spoken of it, yet you never take it off." His expression softened. Taking her hand, he guided her into their dwelling, where a low fire still glowed. By its light, he slipped the leather cord over his head and placed the medallion in her palm. It was silver, worn smooth by time, etched with the image of a woman with flowing hair encircled by rays of light. "It was my mother's," he said quietly. "The only thing I have left of her. The missionaries let me keep it because it reminded them of their saints," he continued, "but it came from my father's people far to the south." "She died when you were taken?" Elira Noxon asked softly. Atau nodded and sat beside her on the furs that served as their bed. "Raiders attacked our camp. My father died defending us. My mother hid me in a crevice among the rocks, then tried to draw them away." His voice stayed even, but the pain behind his eyes was unmistakable. "The missionaries found me 2 days later, still where she had hidden me." Elira closed her fingers around the medallion, feeling its weight. "You've carried her with you all this time. It reminds me who I am," he said simply. "When they tried to erase my past, when soldiers called me savage, when my own people questioned my loyalty after I returned. It reminds me that I am my mother's son, no matter how the world judges me." The trust of the moment, this wound shared after years of silence, moved her deeply. She opened her hand and offered the medallion back. "Thank you for telling me." Instead of taking it, Atau folded her fingers closed again. "Keep it," he said. "Wear it when you go to the governor's city. Let it remind you who you are now, no matter how they see you." "Atau, I can't take this from you." "You are not taking it," he said gently. "I am giving it." He hesitated, then continued with quiet certainty. "It is our way, when a man asks a woman to be his wife." Her breath caught. Though they had lived as partners through the winter, sharing work, shelter, and heart, they had never spoken the word. In the Apache way, their bond was proven by action, not ceremony, yet he understood what such a vow meant in her former world. "Are you asking me to marry you?" she whispered. Atau cupped her face in his hands. "I am asking you to be my wife in every way, before your world and mine, to build a life between them, no matter how hard that path may be." Joy surged through her, sudden and overwhelming. "Yes," she said, fierce and breathless. "Yes, I will be your wife." Their kiss sealed the promise. Soft at first, then deepening with the passion grown over months together. When they parted, he rested his forehead against hers, a gesture that had become their unspoken language. "When you return," he murmured, "we will have the ceremony, Apache and white, if you wish." She smiled, happiness bright enough to outshine her fear of the road ahead. "I only wish to be yours, whatever form that truth must take." Dawn broke clear and cool on the day of departure. Elira wore a dress sewn by Sinai, blending Apache design with white styling, allowing her to walk between worlds without surrendering either. Kiri and Ashen, the warriors who would escort her, had altered their appearance as well, though they still carried traditional weapons alongside traded rifles. The camp gathered to see them off with gifts and quiet blessings. Eli Calder, who had stayed through winter because of his age and the harsh travel, chose to journey with Elira to the territorial capital before continuing on to California. "You've changed how I see the world," he told her. "Miss Noxon, or should I say, Mrs. Atau?" She smiled, though the name fit neither world exactly. "Just Elira." And you've changed too, she added gently. Calder nodded, glancing toward Bram Kessler, who stood among the Apache men. True to his word, Kessler had made himself useful all winter, teaching carpentry, learning the hunt, and had chosen to remain, finding a peace he'd never known among his own people. Funny how life turns, Calder mused. A stagecoach wreck that should have killed us instead gave us new lives. When it was time to go, Atau walked Illyra to the edge of camp where the horses waited. Though many watched, their farewell was their own. 3 weeks, she said, touching the medallion now resting at her throat. I'll be back before the summer solstice. He nodded, his hands warm at her waist. Be careful in the white man's city. There are those who will never understand your choice. I'll be careful. Illyra Noxon kissed him again, committing the feel of him to memory. And if I succeed, I'll help them see that peace is possible. If anyone can bridge these worlds, Atau said softly, it is you, my heart. He lifted her into the saddle with steady, confident hands. Come back to me. Always, she promised. The small party rode out as the sun crested the eastern peaks. Illyra didn't look back until they reached the ridge where the valley vanished from sight. When she turned, Atau still stood where she had left him, alone, watching. She raised her hand in farewell, the medallion flashing against her chest in the morning light, then urged her horse forward onto the uncertain road ahead. The territorial capital throbbed with a bustle that felt alien after months in the high country. The noise, the crowds, the rigid codes of dress and behavior, all of it struck Illyra as strangely manufactured now. She kept a careful distance from the society she had once accepted, without question. Kiri and Ashen made camp beyond the town limits, unwilling to endure the stares and open hostility they anticipated. Illyra, presenting herself as a miner's widow, secured a room in a modest boarding house. Her fair complexion and practiced manners allowed her to move through white society unchallenged, though she felt increasingly like an imposter among her own people. Gaining an audience with Governor Silas Wayne proved harder than expected. For days, she was turned away by clerks and secretaries. Only after a chance encounter with the governor's wife at a charity gathering, where Illyra impressed her with ease and familiarity with Eastern customs, did the door finally open. Mrs. Noxon? Wayne said politely, though without warmth, when she was ushered into his office. My wife speaks well of you. How may I help? Illyra had rehearsed this moment countless times, alone and with Atau. She chose her words carefully. Thank you for seeing me, Governor. I've come regarding a delicate matter, the Apache situation in the Northern Territories. His expression tightened. That situation is a military concern, madam. If you have objections, take them to the command at Iron Spur Post. That would be difficult, sir. She leaned forward slightly. I carry a proposal directly from Chief Atau of the Tonto Apache, one that seeks peace through negotiations outside military channels. Wayne's brows lifted. You claim contact with the Apache leader who has eluded patrols for nearly a year? I've done more than make contact, Illyra said evenly. I lived among his people throughout the winter. I am here as their emissary, authorized to begin preliminary talks. Suspicion replaced surprise. Why would Atau send a white woman to speak for him? Because I understand both worlds, she answered, meeting his gaze. I was traveling to Iron Spur Post last winter to marry Captain Garen Slade when our stagecoach crashed in Apache territory. Atau's people saved my life. Living with them showed me how wrong much of what we believe truly is. She laid out the proposal. Recognition of defined Apache lands in exchange for peace, supervised trading posts to benefit both sides, and a framework for coexistence. As she spoke, Wayne's dismissal softened into reluctant interest. This is highly irregular, he said when she finished. The Army would strongly object to being excluded. The Army has failed to resolve this through force, Illyra replied. Captain Slade's policy of pursuing Apache bands regardless of provocation has only inflamed tensions. Atau offers another way, one that could spare lives. Wayne studied her anew. You speak with conviction for someone once engaged to an army officer. Does Captain Slade know of your change in circumstances? No, she admitted, though I expect he's drawn his own conclusions. Indeed. The governor rose and moved to the window overlooking the square. What you ask requires political courage. Settlers demand protection. The army demands freedom of action. And you ask me to negotiate with people many still call savages. I ask you to recognize their humanity, Elira said quietly, to acknowledge their ancestral rights, to pursue peace through understanding rather than submission. Wayne turned back, thoughtful. Return tomorrow with your Apache companions. I'll hear them as well before deciding. It was more than she had dared hope. Leaving his office, cautious optimism lifted her steps. Perhaps change was possible after all. That hope faltered moments later. Rounding the corner toward her boarding house, a familiar figure stepped into her path, blocking the way. Captain Garen Slade. He was not the man she remembered. Months of war and command had sharpened him into something harder, colder. Deep lines cut around Garen Slade's mouth and eyes, and his captain's uniform sat on him with rigid exactness, as if discipline were the only thing holding him upright. Elira. Her name left his lips like a charge leveled in court. So it's true. You're alive. She steadied herself, even as her pulse thundered. Hello, Garen. 6 months, he said tightly. 6 months of searching, of wondering if you were dead, or worse. His gaze swept her, precise and unforgiving. And now I find you walking free in the territorial capital, whole, unharmed. I am well, Elira replied, aware of the medallion hidden beneath her collar, Atau's vow resting against her skin. He stepped closer. Where have you been? The party's found wreckage, the dead. Bram Kessler vanished, the old man too, and you disappeared. I was rescued, she said carefully, by people who showed me mercy when I had none. Understanding flickered, then curdled. The Apache, he said, disgust sharpening his words. You've been with them. His eyes searched her, hunting for proof of chains. Were you taken? Forced? No, Elira said, meeting him squarely. I chose to stay. Chose, he echoed, incredulous. To live among savages who raid settlements and kill soldiers? I chose to live among people driven from their lands, she answered, voice gaining steel. Whose children die, whose lives are erased piece by piece. I've seen both sides now. They are not the monsters you were taught to hate. He stared as if at a stranger. What happened to you? The woman I knew would never defend hostiles against her own. The woman you knew didn't know the truth. She drew a breath. I regret the pain my disappearance caused you, truly, but I won't return to the life we planned. Because of them, he snapped, drawing glances from passers-by. Or because of him. The scouts say you're with their chief now, that you're his. The word caught, ugly and unfinished. Elira's fingers found the medallion through the fabric. His wife, she said quietly. I will be Atau's wife. He recoiled as if struck. For a heartbeat she feared his hand would rise. Instead he straightened, iron returning to his spine. You've made your choice, he said coldly. Then know this. The territory isn't large enough for your Apache lover and me. One of us won't see the year end. The threat iced her blood. Garen, please. There's a chance for peace. I've spoken with the governor. Peace? He laughed, bitter and raw. There will be none while a single Apache draws breath in these mountains. I'll see to that." He stepped aside with mocking courtesy. "Good day, Miss Noxon. Our engagement is over." She watched him go, back straight, fists clenched. The encounter left her shaken and resolute. Garen's hatred was no idle boast. She had to warn Atau. The meeting with Governor Silas Wayne the next day went better than she dared hope. Kiri and Ashen, dignified in their careful blend of Apache and white dress, spoke calmly of peace, of boundaries honored, of shared trade, of children growing without fear. Wayne listened, probing, thoughtful. By the end, he agreed to draft a preliminary framework, a formal council within 2 months to bring Atau and other leaders to the table. It was a fragile victory, but a victory all the same. Yet Garen's shadow lingered. "We leave at once," Elira told Kiri and Ashen as they collected their mounts. "Captain Slade knows who I am to Atau. He won't wait." They rode hard for 3 days, pushing horse and rider to the edge, racing the mountains, and the storm gathering behind them. Elira's unease deepened with every mile. She had sent word to Atau through a trader who moved quietly between settlements, but there was no way to know if the message had reached him. On the 4th day, as they neared the concealed valley, her fear took shape. Smoke rose beyond the trees, not the thin curl of cooking fires, but thick black columns of ruin. "No!" The cry tore from her as she drove her horse forward without caution. Kiri and Ashen closed in on either side, arrows set as they crested the last ridge. The sight below stole Elira's breath. Half of Ashwind kin lay shattered. Wickiups and cabins collapsed into smoking bones. Warriors moved among the wreckage, binding wounds, salvaging what remained. No soldiers were visible. The attack was finished. They thundered downhill. At the camp's edge, Senai ran to them, face smeared with soot but unhurt. "You're back!" she cried, gripping Elira's hands as she dismounted. "We feared you lost when the bluecoats came." "Atau," Elira said, throat tight. "Where is Atau?" Senai's look was grim, but not hopeless. "The Healing Lodge. He lives—" Elira didn't wait. She ran, barely seeing the devastation, drawn to the large structure that served as their infirmary. Inside, the air was thick with herbs and the sharp tang of blood. Atau lay on a pallet near the central fire, chest wrapped in stained bandages. His skin was pale beneath its bronze, his breathing shallow. When she dropped to her knees, his eyes opened. Recognition, then relief. "You came back," he rasped. "Of course," Elira said, taking his hand, careful of the wounds. "What happened?" "Garen Slade," he said, the name bitter. "He came at dawn with 30 men. Scouts warned us. Most women and children reached the high caves, but—" Pain cut him short. "Don't speak," she urged, tears blurring her sight. He tightened his grip. "Listen, this changes everything. The camp isn't safe now they know it." Tala approached, checking the bandages. The bullet passed through his shoulder, she told Elira softly. Another grazed his side. He is strong. He will heal. Elira thanked her and turned back. "I bring news from Governor Silas Wayne. He agreed to talks, a formal council within 2 months. There is still hope." A shadow crossed Atau's face. "Slade will never allow it. He'll hunt us until one of us falls." "Then we make sure it isn't you." Elira pressed the medallion into his palm. "Your mother protected you once. Let her strength guard you again." His fingers closed around the silver. "You still wish to be my wife, even now, with everything broken?" "Now more than ever." Over the next week, the camp slowly mended. 5 were lost, 3 warriors, an elder, and a child caught in the crossfire. The dead were honored in solemn rites Elira attended as Atau's chosen wife, standing tall despite wary looks from those who blamed her for the soldier's trail. Atau healed swiftly, though new scars joined the old. The council met again and agreed, as one, to move deeper into the mountains while keeping contact with Wayne through trusted hands. As preparations began, Bram Kessler found Elira at the stream. "I'm leaving," he said. "Leaving? Where?" "Iron Spur Post." At her alarm, he lifted a hand. "Not to join them. Slade won't stop. You know that. Pride and jealousy have him. If I testify to what I've seen, the Army's cruelty and the Apache restraint, maybe others will listen. It's dangerous," she warned. "He could brand you a traitor." "Some risks matter?" He smiled faintly. "I was a smaller man before the crash, Miss Noxon. These people changed me. I owe them more than I can repay. This is a start." 2 days later, Kessler departed with the council's blessing and Atau's hard-won respect. The people began their northern passage, a long line of families and belongings slipping deeper into wild country. At the head rode Atau and Elira together. His arm was still secured in a sling, yet his presence carried the same quiet authority as ever. As they guided their horses through a narrow mountain cut, Atau spoke without looking back. "Word reached us from the territorial capital yesterday. Governor Silas Wayne is holding the line on the Peace Council, even with the Army pressing him hard." He added that federal observers had been requested to guarantee fairness. Hope stirred in Elira Noxon's chest. "Then there's still a chance." "A chance," Atau agreed, careful. "But Garen Slade remains a danger. His patrol was seen east of us, tracking parallel." "He won't stop," Elira said quietly. "Not until one of us is buried," Atau finished. "I know." That night they settled into a protected box canyon, doubling the guards along the rim. When darkness settled, Elira sat with Atau beside their small private fire, planning the ceremony that would bind them. Against all reason, or because of it, they refused to wait for safer days. "We'll join both ways," Atau said, tracing symbols in the dust. "The Apache binding rite, then words from your faith." Elira leaned against his uninjured shoulder. "All that matters is that we face whatever comes. Together." The calm shattered with shouts from the camp's edge and the thunder of hooves. Atau was up instantly, blade in hand despite his injury. Elira rose beside him, fingers brushing the small pistol she'd carried since the attack. A single rider burst into the firelight, horse foaming, rider bloodied. Recognition struck. Bram Kessler. "Slade," he gasped as warriors pulled him down. 30 men. They know where you are." Atau barked orders, the camp snapping into motion. "How did they find us?" "They tortured a traitor who saw you moving north," Kessler said, accepting water from Senai. "I broke free to warn you, less than an hour behind me." Elira met Atau's eyes, resolve mirrored there. "We can't keep running." "No," he said, "we can't." In the rush that followed, a plan formed. Not retreat, but a stand on their terms. Women, children, and elders would move north with supplies. Atau and his warriors would remain to face the patrol. "I'm staying," Elira said, when Atau tried to send her away. "This isn't your fight." "It became mine when I chose you," she answered, "and I may be the only one Slade will hear." Atau studied her, then nodded once. "Stay close. If it turns, you ride north. No looking back." "It won't turn," Elira said, braver than she felt. "Not with justice on our side." They chose a narrow pass where stone walls funneled the approach, not for ambush, but for parley. Atau would meet Slade face to face, Silas Wayne's sealed document in hand. "He won't care about papers," Kessler warned as they took position. "He's beyond reason." Then I'll make him listen, Illyra said, straightening her dress, the same one she wore before the governor. Her hair was simple, neat, a living bridge between the worlds she carried. Dawn came cold and clear. Scouts reported the patrol advancing fast, openly. They knew the Apache were ready. Atau stood at the center of the pass, Illyra at his side. Behind them, 20 warriors waited among the rocks, enough not to win a battle, but to make violence costly. Peace first, Atau told his men. Blood only if there's no other road. The patrol appeared as the sun crested the ridge. Captain Garen Slade rode at their head, uniform pristine. He lifted a hand, halting his men when he saw the waiting figures. Silence stretched tight as wire. Then Slade rode forward alone, stopping 30 paces away. "Well," he called, voice sharp in the still air, "the renegade and his white squaw." Illyra felt Atau tense and was grateful when he stayed silent. She stepped forward as planned. "Captain Slade," she said evenly, "we meet under the authority of Governor Silas Wayne, who has sanctioned peace talks between the territorial government and the Apache Nation." She raised the document, the governor's seal catching the light. Slade's eyes narrowed, but he did not move to take it. "The governor has overstepped," he answered coolly. "Military affairs fall under Army authority. These hostiles are wanted for attacks on settlements and patrols. That accusation is false," Atau said at last, his voice even and controlled. "My people have not raided settlements. We have defended ourselves against unprovoked assaults by your soldiers." Garen Slade's stare locked onto him, hatred laid bare. "You took what was mine." "Illyra Noxon makes her own choices," Atau replied calmly, "as she chose to seek peace between our peoples, rather than spill more blood." Slade's jaw tightened. "There will be peace when your kind is on a reservation, or in the ground." Ignoring Atau's warning hand at her arm, Illyra stepped forward. "James," she said, using his given name on purpose, "I know who you were. You were once an honorable man. This feud serves no one, not the territory, not the army, and not you." For a heartbeat, something flickered in Slade's eyes, a shadow of the man she had known, then vanished beneath wounded pride. "You chose him," he said flatly. "A savage over civilization, over your own kind." "I chose compassion over cruelty," Illyra answered. "Understanding over hatred. If that makes me a traitor in your eyes, so be it. But Governor Silas Wayne believes peace is possible. Will you defy him and your own humanity for revenge?" Slade's hand slid to his holster, resting there in silent threat. Behind him, soldiers stiffened, rifles lifting. "One last chance, Illyra," he said quietly. "Come with me. Renounce this alliance, and I'll spare the Apache. They'll leave the territory. Never return." Illyra felt Atau straighten beside her. "And if she refuses?" he asked, already knowing. Slade's smile was thin. "Then I finish what I started at your camp." Before Illyra could answer, hooves thundered from the southern mouth of the pass. A rider approached fast, wearing not army blue, but the formal coat of a territorial official. Soldiers parted in confusion as he reined in beside Slade. "Captain Garen Slade," the official announced, loud enough for all to hear. "I bring orders from Governor Silas Wayne. You are relieved of command pending investigation into unauthorized military action against peaceful Indians." Slade's face twisted in disbelief. "By whose authority?" "By the authority of the territorial government," the man replied, producing a sealed document, "with the support of your commanding general, who was deeply troubled to learn of your personal vendetta. Your men are to return to Iron Spur Post at once. You will accompany me to the capital to answer charges." Silence fell across the pass. Slade's hand hovered near his weapon as shock gave way to rage, then to a grim resignation. "This isn't finished," he said, eyes boring into Elira. "Not while I draw breath." "It is finished, Captain," the official said firmly, "unless you wish to add disobedience to your offenses." For a long moment, Elira feared Slade would draw regardless of consequence, but years of discipline finally prevailed. With a stiff nod, he wheeled his horse. "We return to the fort," he barked to his men, fury barely contained. As the Red Spur column withdrew down the pass, the official turned to Atau and Elira. "Chief Atau, Miss Noxon, the governor sends his regards and reaffirms his commitment to the Peace Council. Recent events have only strengthened his resolve." "How did you find us?" Elira asked, still shaken. "Bram Kessler," the official said with a faint smile. "He reached the governor before Slade's allies could silence him. His testimony, and your work, compelled swift action." Atau stepped forward, extending his hand in the white man's custom. "Your arrival was timely. You have our thanks. The road to peace is long." "There will be resistance," the official cautioned as he shook Atau's hand. But today, bloodshed was avoided. When he departed to escort Slade back to civilization, Apache warriors emerged from their hidden positions, relief visible in every face. Atau turned to Elira, awe and cautious hope mingling in his expression. "Perhaps there truly is a path between our worlds." Elira smiled up at him, heart full. "There has always been a path. We only needed the courage to walk it." 3 weeks later, beneath a flawless summer sky, Elira, Noxon, and Atau stood together on a high rise overlooking their new camp. Below, Apache leaders and white officials gathered carefully, peacefully, the first day of the formal Peace Council unfolding with deliberate, measured steps toward a shared future. Optimism hung in the air. Governor Silas Wayne himself had traveled to the neutral ground chosen for the talks, accompanied by envoys from Washington determined to resolve the Apache conflict without further military disgrace. Atau had gathered leaders from multiple Apache bands, presenting a united presence that commanded respect. Yet this morning was not claimed by politics. It belonged to them. Dressed in ceremonial clothing that honored both heritages, Elira Noxon wore a white gown edged with Apache beadwork, while Atau stood in formal buckskins, a white man's silver watch chain glinting at his waist. They faced one another as the rising sun brushed the mountains with gold. Sinai stood close, holding the woven blanket that would bind them according to Apache tradition. Nearby waited an elderly missionary, one who had once taught Atau and had journeyed north at Elira's request, to speak the Christian vows that honored her upbringing. "Two worlds," Atau murmured, taking Elira's hands. The silver medallion that had once belonged to his mother now rested against Elira's chest, strung on a beaded chain, flashing in the light like a promise kept. Around them, people from both cultures gathered to witness their joining, a living proof that understanding could cross boundaries long believed impassable. As the ceremony unfolded, Elira met Atau's gaze and saw their future reflected there. It would not be easy, but it would be rich with meaning and love. The road they had chosen would demand courage from them both, standing as they did at the fragile meeting point of divided worlds. Yet with his steady hands enclosing hers, Elira knew with certainty that she had found her true home, not in any land, but in the heart of the man who had claimed her with a single look across the frozen wilderness that first bound their fates. "I am yours," she vowed, her voice clear in the mountain air, "in this world and whatever follows." "And I am yours," Atau answered, words that were oath and blessing together, until the stars fall from the sky. Their kiss sealed the promise, and the gathering answered with a mix of Apache ululations and white applause, discordant, yet somehow harmonious, like the union before them. The future remained uncertain. Peace talks would face resistance, and old wounds would not fade overnight. Somewhere, Garen Slade nursed his bruised pride and plotted his return. But those trials belonged to tomorrow. Today belonged to a love that had crossed boundaries, defied expectation, and risen above the bitter weight of mistrust. Today was hope, made real in two people who had found, in each other, the courage to imagine a different world. And as Atau lifted Elira into his arms beneath the endless Arizona sky, that hope felt not merely possible, but inevitable. Strong as the love that had taken root in the harshest wilderness and now flourished against all odds under the watchful eyes of two peoples taking their first careful steps toward understanding. Finally, let me send my deep thanks to you. Thank you for giving your time to this story. Some journeys shape us, and we hope this one left a mark on your heart. There are more paths ahead, more legends of love, hardship, and redemption beneath the western sky. Please subscribe, leave your thoughts, and travel with us once again. Thank you, and God bless. Aviso legal. Disclaimer. The stories presented here are creative expressions and may mix historical inspiration with dramatized scenes. AI tools contribute to some elements of voice, imagery, and structure, but every published story is refined by editors and creators to ensure authentic emotional impact. We honor YouTube's policies and do not generate deceptive likenesses or artificial depictions of real people. All audiovisual components are legally licensed. Any use, redistribution, or alteration of this content must be granted through written consent. Your presence here means a lot. Thank you for supporting artistic storytelling.